Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Real Red Talk, an authentic football fan channel dedicated to Manchester United. This is your breaking news show. I'm flying solo today, so make sure you get your comments in, throw me some questions so we can interact as much as possible as I go through the topics on the table, because on today's show, I'm going to be discussing some controversial comments from a club legend who has done an interview with ESPN. It's got me and the fan base absolutely pulling the hair out. The club is in the title, just in case you're wondering. We've also had some big updates in regards to the ownership. Are the Glazers set? Are the Glazers set to stay? Are they starting to get cold feet? Reports suggesting they may be having second thoughts about selling the club. So I'm definitely going to address that. And there's a few other bits I want to touch on as well towards the end of the show. But obviously the two important factors are the comments from Rooney on ESPN, which are just absolutely ridiculous. And then the ownership thing as well, which is slightly worrying as a Manchester United fan. So like I said, get in the comment section. Let's interact with this. And I'll go through the topics. But before I dive into the topics on the table, make sure you subscribe, like, and share the channel. If you like our content, make sure you check out the show me and Shreyas did last night. What started as a kind of a structured, insightful show turned into, developed into kind of a quality off-the-cuff conversation and interacting with the people in the comment section as well. And it turned out to be a really good show. So make sure you check that out after this one if you're a little bit stuck for content on Saturday. I'm aware the 3 o'clock kickoffs are ongoing at the minute, but yeah, look, no one wants to watch 3 o'clock kickoffs, do this. So let's dive into it. Let's dive straight into it, should I say. Where to start with this? It's hard. So Wayne Rooney has done an interview with ESPN, mainly to do with DC United and their progress. But the interviewer starts asking questions about Manchester United and opens a can of worms completely on this subject. So the interviewer asked Rooney, he said, "I have to ask you about the bids that have gone in. Do you think it's time to sell, or would you stick with the Glazers?" Rooney's response, by the way. Firstly, I think the Glazers have done a fantastic job. Just in case that doesn't get clipped, don't clip that. That's what Rooney said, not me. Rooney has said, firstly, I think the Glazers have done a fantastic job. They've been at the club for, they signed me in 2004, so nearly 20 years. They've always allowed the managers to bring in the players they want. But it's clear the fans want change, and it seems like the Glazers are open to sell, so hopefully they get the right people in and the club can move forward. Tend to agree with a little bit of that statement. Now, there's a couple of things that I wrote wrong with that quote instantly. I'm so tired. I have to put it out there. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I am knackered. I've had about 4 hours sleep. And I was up a lot of the night reading into this situation with the interview with Rooney and the ownership situation. It's just got me mad frustrated. So, yeah, I've chosen to do a show on this. And I've done I've deep dived into it. Just to give Rooney something to look at, something to listen to, which, he's not going to listen to this, but just to put something out there to say you can't come out with them kind of statements without having, something backing behind you. A guy coming out saying, firstly, I think the Glazers have done a fantastic job. This is an ex-legend of the club. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And like I said, there's a couple of things wrong with that quote straight away. First and foremost, how can anybody, with the credit that Wayne Rooney has with the fans, say that the Glazer family have done a fantastic job at Manchester United? That I'm absolutely, I couldn't believe it, what I was reading at the time. Now, not everything, people believe, not everything ex-players say is absolute gospel and should be the absolute truth. Just because they was great on the pitch does not mean that everything they say is right, because he was amazing at football. Wayne Rooney is one of the best players we've ever had at Manchester United, but sometimes off the pitch has not exactly been the most trustworthy, has it? And need I remind you, Wayne, the Glazers had success for 8 years when they first took over, not because they was fully invested into a passion project, only because the greatest manager ever was still in the dugout alongside a very competent chief executive in David Gill. So they didn't need to change anything at all. They just let Fergie continue doing the great work he's been doing already and reap the benefits from it financially with annual dividends. So the first 8 years, when we were still winning things, it's very easy to look like a good ownership because everybody's happy, the fan base happy, there's positivity. But there's still stuff going on behind closed doors amongst this that a lot of fans knew was going on and a lot of fans protested about, including myself. Once Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill left, the devil, Ed Woodward, got put in charge. And it was Disneyland signings. It was undeserved big money contracts to anyone who basically fancied one, to attempt to try, retain their value in a sense, giving these big ass contracts out, which essentially did the opposite and made them unsellable to other clubs because they didn't want to pay the wages that United give him. You're talking about 200k a week, 150k a week for average players, very average players. Thus, the start of a talentless player pileup, which was smokescreened by financial reports. This is just a couple of things. This is a couple of things that I mentioned. We look at the managers that have been brought in by this board of directors, who essentially are kept in charge by the Glazers as well. So we start with David Moyes. Every big decision they made ended in failure, pretty much. David Moyes, the successor to Ferguson, the manager's choice, fair play, the responsibility is split. I get that, but the Glazers still approved it, right? That appointment lasted a total of 10 months after failing to qualify for Champions League, even after being linked with the likes of Toni Kroos, Fabregas, Gareth Bale, Thiago. We ended up with Marouane Fellaini on the last day of the window and ended up paying more initially than what we got, what Everton said they'd sell him for, basically, at the end of June. We ended up paying an extra 10, 15 million, I think, on the last day of the window with a new manager after Fergie, where this is supposed to be the next man in charge, the next one taking the reins, the next one to lead us to glory. And you're waiting until the last day to get Marouane Fellaini. It's just like, where's the longevity in that? Where's the backing? So it wasn't a fantastic start, but look, the social media numbers are growing, so it's absolutely fine. We don't qualify for the Champions League, and a dynasty that was built up since 1986 when Fergie first came in starts to show fragile cracks. But not to worry, like I said, because the social media numbers are growing. We've got the most followers on TikTok, and that's all that mattered to him at the time. Growth, apparently. We move on to the next manager. We appoint someone with a lot of credit in Europe, a tactically astute manager in Louis van Gaal. I think at the time he'd won 19 trophies, just finished third in the World Cup with Netherlands. So it kind of made sense to appoint someone like that to steer United back to success. But again, in the summer transfer window, they blow most of the budget on a shiny signing in Di Maria, who, let's be honest, didn't really want to leave Madrid anyway, and ended up as a terrible signing. I think he had about 15 goal involvements, but as your summer sparkly signing, if you look back on that, how it went, wasn't amazing. You look at Radamel Falcao, another big name they went for, scored a couple of goals, was injured quite a lot, didn't work out at all. And then in Van Gaal's first season, he secured Champions League football. So you think, right, so there's a bit of a positive element there. You go back the manager, etc. He goes and wins a trophy the next season, just finishes outside the top four. Due to, I think it was a bit of a bad run in the December, which knocked him down the table a little bit. But he's won an FA Cup. He's finished just outside by points or goal difference, I think it may have been. And then they sack him, which got me thinking, like, right, okay, there's some clear signs here that the club don't really know what they're doing. And this is a couple of years in now. We've had one manager who was supposed to be the successor after Sir Alex Ferguson. He goes, that completely fucks up. They bring in another one, this world-class manager. That ends up fucking up as well, even though he did relatively well in certain areas. And then the signings that were made were still really bad as well. So you think, okay, right, maybe third time lucky. Jose Mourinho. What happened with Jose Mourinho? Wasteful spending, a shoddy transfer strategy. They spent almost 400 million on transfer fees and had nothing to show for it. Mourinho re-signing Paul Pogba for 89 million was an absolute joke. Nearly a world record fee. I think it might have been, well, it was our record fee at the time. Bringing back a player who you let go for free initially, then buying him for 90 million and then letting him go on a free again is outrageous and criminal from the club standpoint. Signing Alexis Sanchez on 500k a week to then be sold to Inter Milan on loan, where we're paying most of his fees anyway. 4 goals in 30 appearances. People might say, well, these managers might have wanted these players, but ultimately you have people in charge of recruitment and contracts. And if there's ever issues with these kind of things, there should be a committee board, and you should have a discussion about it frequently and saying, look at our history. Look at the contracts we've been given out. Look at the failures at the club. This is something that needs to be addressed immediately. And there's been 10 years of this shit. 10 years of this shit. And this was evident in that period, along with Woodward and Mourinho. They'd run out of ideas in the market. And we kept getting good signings on paper, which rapidly went wrong. As well as bad signings, lack of communication. We had the Mourinho's press conference theatrics and public fallouts, which, to be fair, probably distracted a lot of people and was a welcome distraction for the Glazers, because that basically took the attention away from the damage they was doing behind closed doors. This stuff that was going on in the media, and obviously the media, we know what happens with Jose Mourinho. The media absolutely jump on it and make a big thing out of it, which that again was another smokescreen to cover up the bad decisions that have been made at board level. So by this point, with 3 managers in, I've spoken about Moyes, I've spoken about Louis van Gaal, the failures behind them. Yes, they had their own faults as well. They was a part of it, but this is a lot of it's on Ed Woodward, and a lot of it's on the people who work underneath him and who employ them people. It's the Glazers, right? So we've gotten up to Jose Mourinho. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. And I've not even mentioned the eye-watering dividends and salaries from United over the past few years that the Glazers have taken out, on top of the massive interest payments due to leverage takeover. Like I said, we have been witnessing the Glazers oversee a mega decline for the most successful club of the Premier League era. So what do we do next? We've had all this trouble, years worth of shit. We're clearly falling off the edge of a cliff. We're going down as a club. We keep failing. We've won a couple of trophies along the way, an FA Cup with Van Gaal, a League Cup, and Europa League with Jose Mourinho. But United always need more than that. So who do we turn to next? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We hire an ex-player who got relegated with Cardiff, but because he had a bit of a manager bounce in his first 12 games or whatever it was, we signed him on a permanent contract. You give him the full-time job based on pure emotion. And at the time, because the club had got so toxic under Jose Mourinho, the board was so desperate for some positivity, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer provided that natural PR with his character and with the status at the club, obviously being a club legend, scoring the biggest goal in our history in '99. So the Glazers and the board knew that appointing him when he had such a good manager bounce at the time, obviously the fans are going to back it because the guy's a legend of the club. It was a no-brainer for the Glazers to do that, whether he had the right CV for the job or not, which ultimately he didn't. But again, investment in players, terrible. We overpay majorly for Harry Maguire. You get embarrassed by Leicester in that situation. You get taken to the cleaners by Crystal Palace for Wan-Bissaka. You're losing more and more money by the year due to the decline on the pitch. And you still leave Ed Woodward in charge. Probably because he benefits you from a commercial standpoint and he gets these deals over the line with TeamViewer and Chevrolet. And you're announcing, your figures online and stuff. And like a broken record, we go again. No updates on when Old Trafford's, going to be renovated, or the training ground, or the facilities, or, the women's teams getting changed in toilets, basically. But this doesn't matter because, again, your following on social media is bigger than any other club. Your global reach is bigger than any other club. Let's talk about the things that really matter here. Really matter. That have been just absolutely neglected for a number of years. It's, as United fans, I don't want to cover all ground. We've spoken about it so much. Everything to do with the infrastructure, the recruitment. These are all things led by the board, led by these, I feel like Murta and Richard Arnold are being branded as new people who are starting to get a grip of the club now. Now, whether that's journalist spin or not, because I'm hearing it from credible people like Andy Mitten, Laurie Whitwell, these guys that suggested actually Richard Arnold and John Murta are doing a fantastic job now. If you look at the summer, it's blah, 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 which got me thinking, yeah, I did look at the summer. We tried signing Adrian Rabiot and Arnautovic and failed in both signings at a club like Manchester United. We flew to Barcelona over 5 times to try to get the De Jong deal over the line and wasted 12 weeks. Yes, we got Casemiro out of it, but that wasn't the plan. Let's not pretend that was the plan all along. We ended up overpaying for Anthony as well when we could have got him probably for 20 million, 30 million cheaper at the start of the summer. We got beaten many, many discussions. When it's just United going for a player, we tend to get the deal over the line. When any other club's involved, never win it. We never ever win it, but still manage to overpay for certain players, which just absolutely boggles the mind. But back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. After 3 years, we still end up trophyless with players who just didn't want to be at the club, owners who were just there to take dividends and nearly succeed, by the way, in an attempt to join a European Super League. Joel Glazer being the co-chairman of that, with Ed Woodward, with his mate from JP Morgan as well, which could have ruined the pyramid of football, period. Woodward then retires because of the aftermath of the Super League, and it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. The Glazers invest in Ronaldo, Sancho, Varane as an attempt to, again, another cover-up, another smokescreen to the absolute devastation they tried causing to English football. And then Ole has a bad run of results. You don't sack him before the international break. We get slapped by Leicester, Aston Villa, Liverpool, Man City, and you keep him in charge. You would think the international break would be the perfect time to get rid of the manager and get a new person in. I know Conte was available, and looking back on it now in hindsight, people may be looking at it and thinking it probably wasn't the right decision, right? I will attest to that, and I'll agree to that. That still doesn't mean you couldn't have gone and got a capable manager in during that time frame. We don't do anything. We sit on it. We sit and wait. The international break finishes. We've got Watford. What happens in that Watford game? We get slapped by Watford 4-1. And then they decide, oh, yeah, maybe actually he might not be the right guy for the job. Maybe we got it wrong. Again, there seems to be a reoccurring theme here, doesn't there? There's something systematically wrong with the way Manchester United's being run. And where does that stem from? The Glazers. What happens again? We become a reactive club rather than having plans in place. We go initially we're scrambling about trying to get someone to come in. We hire Ralph Rangnick, who has a very good pedigree in Europe for building clubs, but hadn't managed in a while. Protests are ongoing, not much changes, and we drag ourselves to the end of the season with numerous issues along the way as well. Some big egos in that dressing room: Paul Pogba, Cristiano Ronaldo, Edison Cavani, and many, many others. Jesse Lingard, who ended up leaving in the summer, but they was a part of the problem whilst Rangnick was in charge. And Rangnick basically got thrown under a bus. There was talks he was going to be going up to board level after he'd done this interim job. He ended up being Austria manager because the club didn't want to keep him on. Now, there's many suggestions as to why they didn't want to keep not Richard Arnold, why they didn't want to keep Rangnick on. Was it because, Murtaugh's already in charge of certain football operations? He didn't want to lose his job. Egos were in place. I have no idea. Was it because could have been a potential clash between Erik ten Hag and Rangnick? Maybe that's what the club wanted to think. I don't have a clue. Maybe there's some elements of truth in little bits of it. But not keeping hold of a man who identified so many issues at the club, including the board, by the way, including the recruit, including the structure, everything. Rangnick was speaking to the fans in his press conference. Now, some people like Rio Ferdinand came out and said, oh, you shouldn't air your dirty laundry and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the fans deserve to know what was going on. We're all sat here saying, why is a club with, yes, big ego players, but very talented players with, potentially the biggest, the biggest fan base globally, with the potential of any club. You put United against any Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool, whoever, our potential growth as a club is absolutely massive. And where we was at that point, it turned into like one of the worst seasons ever. It was absolute breaking point for Manchester United. And this was just an accumulation of bad decisions made at the very top. This isn't just a stint of one manager. This is repetitive decision after bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. It's a reactive club putting plasters on gunshot wounds, trying to keep it alive, essentially. Alongside this, the owners were paying off interest on expensive hedge fund loans that they needed to close the deal in 2005. The club's average annual interest payments between 2006 and 2010 alone were £95 million. So that's at the start of the reign, more than a third of their annual revenues. 2 years later, they floated a chunk of the club shares on the New York Stock Exchange, raising another $150 million, half of which they used to reduce the takeover debt, and the other half they pocketed, as well as the overdraft facility used during COVID, which pushed the net gross, the debt up to £600 million. So if this isn't evidence of long-term mismanagement, I don't know what the fuck is. How can anybody look at this model and suggest otherwise? I can't get my head around it. I don't understand how someone like Rooney can come out. It makes me feel like naturally he's on his payroll or something. Because I know he's in charge of DC now, DC United, who's the manager there. I don't know who the owners are. I think they own Swansea City as well. Is there a connection between the owners and the Glazers? We're living on conspiracy road at the minute. I have no idea. But there is something going on there. Why would Wayne Rooney come out with them comments, ridiculous comments, by the way, saying the Glazers have done a fantastic job? I've just listed off about a million things that they've categorically got wrong at United. These are factual things. It's not my opinion. It's not something I've just cooked up from nowhere. They have been awful for the club since they've taken over, and people could see this on mile off even before they did take over. I think they already had shares in the club. I think they was initially at 29%. And obviously there was two Irish people, owners, or who had invested in shares as well, who had a certain percentage, who ended up selling their percent to the Glazers. which meant they had the majority then. And I think it was Malcolm Glazer who initially got the club over the line. But it was with leveraged debt. They only paid about £200 million of their own money. The rest was debt, which we kept paying interest on interest on interest and interest. And it was just lingering and still is lingering to this day. So please, anyone who's got some form of argument for these absolute parasites who've been in charge of Manchester United, how they have been good for the club, because I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. Even rival fans couldn't name one thing, really, that they've done that's been fantastic for the club whilst the Glazers have been in charge. Let me read a few comments, and then I want to get into the ownership as well, because there's some discussions on that. Brandon's in the house saying, loving the content. Thank you very much, Brandon. Rono edits. I can't wait for Sunday. We're going to have a massive preview for that, which Sam alludes to there. Big preview for that at 5 o'clock. So in an hour and a half, I think. An hour and 40 minutes. Aaron Gregory, the fact we threw away a season in November, was ridiculous. That's what I mean. That's one of the things mentioned. There's a million things that the Glazers have done to fuck up this club. And when I hear someone like Wayne Rooney saying they've done a fantastic job, the first thing I thought to myself was, you've played under a number of these managers. You played under Mourinho, you played under Van Gaal, you played under Moyes, and obviously you played under Ferguson. When Ferguson left, they were the main managers you played under. The bad ownership has been going on for years, but it was more highlighted when new managers were brought in, because to be the successor to Alex Ferguson is basically impossible at this point. So he saw what's going on. How could you possibly make that conclusion? Also, he mentioned that, when the Glazers came over in 2004, the Glazers took charge in 2005. So this whole quote, what he said, is factually wrong. And it's just irritating, because someone with a platform like his, you might have young kids listening to that interview and thinking, oh, he might be right, actually. Yeah, well, Wayne Rooney says it, so it must be gospel. It must be a bloody ex-player saying it. It must be gospel. And you sat there just thinking, what? Like, it's just so infuriating as a fan. It's absolutely, it just angered me to death. And under this same regime that he's calling fantastic, Wayne Rooney handed in a transfer request questioning the lack of ambition from the club after Cristiano Ronaldo left. So what is he talking about? That is just the hypocrisy is unbelievable. Do you all remember that? When Wayne Rooney handed in a transfer request and said, the club's got lack of ambition. After we signed Ronaldo. This is another highlight, which I'm not even mentioned, by the way. After we sold Ronaldo, who did we sign? Can we remember who we signed? Obertan. Who the fuck is that guy? We signed Michael Owen. And then we signed another player as well. I wish I could remember who it was. We signed another one. And you're sat there, maybe, was it Valencia? Might have been, it might not. Yeah, it might have been. I'm not entirely sure. But to replace Cristiano Ronaldo, a Ballon d'Or winner, the best player in the world, with Obertan. What's going on? Who's sanctioned that? Who's looked at that and said, right, lads, let's huddle up. Okay, so Cristiano Ronaldo wants the league to go to Real Madrid. We're going to get 80 million. Way! Yeah! Popping champagne bottles. Yeah! And we're happy to say we've identified a player we would love to bring in to replace him. And then everyone's tapping on the table going, oh, are you ready? Obertan. And the room goes quiet. And everyone goes, who? Who's what? Is that a biscuit? No, he's a player he's a winger, French winger from somewhere. Oh, right, okay. And he's going to replace Ronaldo, is it? Yeah. I think he'll do a good job. Right, okay. We're also going to sign a 34-year-old Michael Owen, who's injury prone to foot. Cracking. Fantastic. Yeah. I think that should go well. Do you think? Yeah. Everyone shook hands on it. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. It's Fergie in it. He'll probably still get results out of it, which ultimately he did. Still won a Premier League title. Still did Fergie things, because Fergie could work with fucking, anything. Anything that is dispensed. The guy won Premier League titles with Anderson and Cleverley in the midfield. Like, he's a magician, much like Erik ten Hag is now. So that was the only reason why the Glazers were successful for that first 8-year period from 2005, because Fergie was there. Look what happened with Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Rangnick. Look, everything that happened. Woodward leaves. There's a few adjustments. Let's not pretend that there was massive adjustments, because Murta and Arnold got a promotion basically, but they was at that club during that time whilst everything was going on. Maybe there was a few changes under Richard Arnold. Now, I'm open to it. I'm not just closed mind, pessimistic, saying, no, he's not done fuck all. I refuse to admit it because, like I said, a lot of journalists and a lot of credible people, even, Jonathan Schrager, who we spoke to on the show, was discussing, like, I think Murta will get it right this summer. I think, Richard Arnold are doing right things this summer. So I'm open to that. But who is still in charge? The Glazers. The Glazers. They need to go. They absolutely need to go. And if they thought, I'll get into the ownership. I want to discuss the ownership a bit more because there's been some things that came out about that last night and this morning, which has got me absolutely livid, and I want to discuss. But before we get into that, I'll just read a comment out. Aaron Gregory, loyalty clouds judgment sometimes. Does he feel he needs to be loyal for the people who ran the club during the time he was playing and made captain? Also put him on 300k a week. That's what I mean. There's some tangibles in this that we don't fully know about. I don't have tie, which people might not believe, but I don't have ties into Wayne Rooney. I don't know the guy. He's obviously a legend in my eyes, but there could be some form of ties to the Glazers or something. It could be on the payroll. I have absolutely no idea. One can only assume at this point. So, look, it's a bit mad at the minute. I suppose, a little bit of a positive is the interview that he given, because I watched it all last night. I didn't just watch the clip and then react. I had to go find the full interview on ESPN. It's about 15 minutes long. And it isn't all dribble, in fairness. He's speaking in this interview. He does say Eric Ten Hag's doing a fantastic job. It's exactly what the club needed. And from the players he's spoken to, they've communicated the same thing. Dressing room culture important. He's keeping them players engaged, even the ones that are on the bench, and they're coming off and having a big impact as well. So it wasn't all dribble. But the ownership thing was, in the fans' eyes, anyone who listens to that, people naturally will just see the quotes and jump at it, which I did. 100%, I was very reactive to it. But then I had to just go watch the full interview just to get context, to make sure we weren't getting honey-dicked. But he definitely said them things. That was something. If anyone wants to see that interview, type in Wayne Rooney interview on ESPN DC United, and you'll see them comments. And he says it with clear conviction as well. It's not as if he was like stuttering, going in. Yeah, of course. It's like, I think the Glazers have done a fantastic job. And I don't even think the guy who was interviewing reacted. He didn't even go, you think they've done a fantastic job? He was just like nodding along, being a yes man. Like, if I was that interview, obviously I'm a United fan, so it would have been a bit weird to do it. Maybe the guy's a United fan as well. I'm not entirely sure. But if I was doing that interview and he said that, I'd be like, hold on a sec, Wayne. Let me pick at you at that. Can you please tell me why you think the Glazers have done a fantastic job? I know you mentioned something along the lines of they've backed every manager. Have they? I seem to remember Jose Mourinho. I know he spent a bit of money, but I seem to remember him in America in pre-season saying he needed a centre-back and the club wouldn't back him. I seem to remember Louis van Gaal having a list of players that he wanted that he couldn't go for, and he had to get the B option and C option. I remember January just gone, where, you had teams like Chelsea, Arsenal investing in big players who are going to be, well, arguably for Chelsea it might not be, but a lot of the teams invested in January where it's going to be game changers for them this season and put them higher up the table. We signed Weghorst, who's a Burnley player who does a job, but let's be honest, he's not a João Felix, is there? Or he's not a Trossard. He's okay. And then we only signed Sabitzer because Christian Eriksen gets injured long-term, and Donny van der Beek's already injured long-term as well. Look at any transfer window, it's always been reactive rather than proactive. Desperate signings. Igalo on deadline day. A summer under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer where we signed Donny van der Beek, who Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't even want. We signed Edison Cavani, who no one even heard. Like, obviously people have heard of him as a player and a big reputation in Europe, but this guy was a free agent. He did an all right job in the first season, granted, but this is just evidence. This is clear, hard evidence that these guys do not know what they're doing at the very top. Manchester United have been misrun. That is a fact. That is an absolute fact. So just because a club legend says the Glazers have been fantastic, they haven't backed the managers, it's not true at all. There's a lot more evidence to it than that, which I've just given you a whole list of things to look at. And if you missed it, scroll back. Everything's in there, including the financial results behind the club as well. So yeah, I move on to something next that's pissed me off today as well. Even more so, probably. The Wayne Rooney comment pissed me off. And then I saw reports from Laurie Whitwell and Dan Sheldon as well from The Athletic regarding the ownership. So, buckle up for this. Buckle up. So, this is according to Dan Sheldon, who's a very good journalist surrounding The Athletic. He says, Joel and Avram Glazer, the executive co-chairman, are reluctant to sell the club. Avram has recently given the impression that he is, in his own way, still emotionally invested in the club. Let me just repeat that line. Let me just repeat it in case you're thinking you have to double take and be like, what? Joel and Avram Glazer, the executive co-chairman of Manchester United, are reluctant to sell the club. Avram has recently given the impression that he is, in his own way, still emotionally invested in the club. Emotionally invested. Now, season ticket prices are going up for the first time in over a decade. The club's share price on the New York Stock Exchange has taken a turn for the worst. Avram Glazer, as well, is apparently attending Wembley for the Carabao Cup final, which may suggest signals or add to signals about him and Joel staying in charge. This could, of course, be a negotiation tactic to draw higher bids, but sources detect the two brothers are reluctant to sell. It's the line still emotionally invested that makes me want to head but a wall until my head falls off. The word emotion and the Glazers is like mixing vodka and gravy together. They just do not blend well. They really do not blend well. Anyone who's described the Glazers as, they've always said, hard-nosed businessmen who get straight to the point. That's how they get described. Not loving, caring people who have a passion project and they absolutely love the club. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Now, as a result of this, they've looked at the bids. They haven't got what they want. They've spoken to the Rain Group and they've consulted with financial experts who have probably said, look, you're going to have to hard bargain this. If you throw out there that you're still committed to the club and you might not end up selling, the pressure from the fans will be huge. The pressure from the media will be huge. Maybe there'll be an outpour of a little bit of desperation for people who are bidding for the club. As well as, the rare opportunity of United being for sale for the first time in 18 years. These things don't come round very often, do they, if we're being completely honest? And for me, I'm not reacting to it emotionally. I think it's I do think it's a bit of a tactic. I'm 50-50 on it, to be honest. I'm a little bit on the fence because would it surprise you if they turned around, the Glazers have put it out there to the Rain Group, see who is potentially interested in investment or a full sale of the club. If we don't get £6 billion for the club, we'll probably take some investment to keep our heads above water so we continue milking this club for what we've been doing for the past 18 years. Sorry, I'm not Wayne Rooney. So will Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Qatar bite? I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. If they stay on, expect some fucking huge protest. The biggest you've ever seen in your life. Expect a lot of fucking anger in the fan base. Watch your financials drain even more. Watch games get boycotted. And watch, if you saw the reaction to the Super League, how that went down, imagine the Glazers announce that they're going to sell the club and then they do a U-turn on it and decide to stay for another 10 years. I can't even imagine the reaction from the fan base. I know how I'd react. I'd be unbelievably livid and I'd be outside the stadium with fireworks a lot and I'd be trying to get every single game cancelled. They must know this. But again, it goes back to him being emotionally invested. They've never been emotionally invested. This game that he's planning to attend to, the Carabao Cup tomorrow, will be the first game he's attending to in about 6 years. How can you have a family who own a club who don't even have a location near the stadium or near Manchester to regularly visit the club? They just stay across the pond in America. They'll drop an email every once and again, like Joel does, and just say, right, what's the financial saying? Are we making money? Will we get Champions League this season? Yes, probably. Cool. Right, we don't need to do anything else. Take 200 million out of the club's revenue, what we make, invest in some players, keep them afloat. There. Jobs are good in. That's all they do. That's all they do. So these emotionally invested, I think they need to get there. He's about, I tell you what, Avram Glazer is about as committed as his hair staying on his head. You're on your way out, mate. You're on your way out. Don't try and make a U-turn now. Honestly, it's so frustrating as a fan having owners like this. And when people throw it back in your face as well, and they say, oh, well, they've invested money, so they can't be that bad owners. Have you seen who they've given the money to? Have you seen who they've left in charge of the club? Do you know who Ed Woodward is? Have you looked at our past 10, 12 years since Fergie left? How bad the club has gone. I said at the start of the show, these Disneyland signings that Ed Woodward would persist on, selling the club to him like it's some fucking tourist attraction, giving out big, massive contracts to undeserved players. When Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took charge, Ed Woodward sanctioned a 5-year deal for Phil Jones. A 5-year deal for Phil Jones on 100, I think it's 130 grand a week. How is this competence at any level? This is Manchester United. This is one of the biggest clubs on the planet. And it's being run like Accrington Stanley. All due respect to Accrington Stanley, you ready? All due respect to the other clubs, but we're the biggest club in the world, and we're run like a small-time club, like a League One club. It's absolutely awful. Even the process of them selling the club is painful. Everything these guys do is ignorance and money motivated, and we're seeing this with the sale of the club now. But look, we've dropped a poll out, and I want to see what people think. So, excuse me a second. So we've put up: do the Glazers end up staying? 20% think yes, 80% think no. So for the 20% who said yes, please let me know in the comment section why you've said yes and why you've gone with that. Because I'm interested to know. Because I'm leaning towards both sides. Do I think it could be a strategic strategy? Do I think it could be a strategy to get the bidders to pay higher? Yeah, 100%. Could be the a potential reason. But would it surprise you in the slightest if Joel and Avram, who never wanted to sell the club in the first place, find some little seedy way financially to keep the head above water, to keep draining the club for another 10 years? Would it surprise? Honestly, just ask yourself that question right now whilst you're sat doing whatever you do. You got your brew in your hand, you're about to dip your biscuits. There's a lot of biscuit talk on here. You're about to dip your biscuits. You sat there with your pipe, whatever it is you're doing, watching your 3 o'clock kickoffs. Would it surprise you if they stayed on? Because it wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me if you just look at the history of what they've done. I believe there was talk of it in 2010 or 2011 where Qatar came in to buy the club, and the Glazers said, "Nope, we don't care what people are saying in the media or whatever. We're just going to continue as operations run." They could easily turn around now. It's not out of the realms of possibility for them to turn around and say, "We decided not to sell the club. Elliott management are going to invest £1 billion so we can put the stadium up. We're going to repay that in loans again for the millionth time, add more debt onto the club, and then service it with the club's revenue, essentially." That's the way it feels it's going. I don't think it, I'm 50-50 on it at the minute. I'm trying not to be emotionally invested myself, but we're fans. We are the most emotionally invested out of anyone. We care about this club. We treat this club like a religion. This is our church. This is our God. We absolutely adore it and love it. It's our heritage. We've grew up with it. These people who own the club have no emotional investment, emotional tie to it whatsoever. If they did, they wouldn't have made the decisions they have done for the past 18 years. Let's get that clear straight away. So we will wait for more developments on this ownership situation. And obviously we will go live if and when it gets announced. I'm just going to double check Twitter now to see if there's anything that's popped up whilst I've been live. Because usually when I am live, stuff tends to thinger. So let's have a look. There was a couple of things that I wanted to touch on as well, which are a little bit more in a positive light. So Amad Diallo is obviously on loan at Sunderland. He got a goal today. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it, but he scored an absolute peach of a goal today. I think it was against Coventry. It was in like the 92nd minute, so didn't hold much significance. But if you look at the goal, his technical ability is insane, unbelievable. What a player he is, and I believe he'll go from that inverted winger to a number 10. I've always said this. I've always believed that he's got the qualities to play there. Similar to what you've seen with Jadon Sancho now. Amad Diallo likes to drift in quite a lot. And if you look at how Erik ten Hag sets up tactically in a game, he likes Anthony keeping the width on that right-hand side. And Anthony doesn't tend to drift in. He allows space for Dallo on the underlaps, or sometimes he'll come in a little bit to allow the overlaps. But naturally, he'll hold the width there. Amad Diallo likes to operate in the half space, similar to Juan Mata when he played on the right-hand side. So I really think Amad Diallo could be a backup for Bruno Fernandes next year. And that sounds like a big comment to suggest, a big thing to suggest, but I do. I think he's that good. I think he's really, really good. And I think under Erik ten Hag, there's no better coach to nurture players. And I think he'll be in the squad next season. People might disagree, but I've watched him a lot at Sunderland, and I know it's the Championship, but he is a good player. I'm telling you right now, he's a good player. And I think he'll be successful at Manchester United, especially if he continues on the run that he's currently on. So that's just a little update on Amad Diallo. He's doing fantastic at Sunderland. He obviously got Player of the Month as well for December or January. It was one of them. He got Player of the Month in the Championship. So he's lighting it up at the minute. And if you listen to Sunderland fans, the way they talk about him, it's like they absolutely adore him. He's been amazing for them. He's been an absolute godsend for them. And you don't pay that amount of money to Atlanta when we signed him, £30 million, whatever it was, 20 plus add-ons. If you don't see something special there in a player, he will be good. I'm absolutely convinced of it. So I suppose that's some positive news. Another loan signing, doing really, really well. And then there's a bit more news. I've seen something on Harry Maguire, and they asked him about, captaincy and all this kind of shit. I'm just trying to find the quote now because I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So he said, "It's an absolute huge honour for a captain of this football club, a real privilege. Ever since I've been made captain, it's been a dream to lift my first trophy for this football club. What I wanted to ask you lot, how would you feel about Maguire lifting the cup tomorrow instead of Bruno Fernandes, who, let's be honest, has been the real captain? I'd rather Lisandro lift it. I'd rather Casemiro lift it. I'd rather Varane lift it. I'd rather David De Gea lift it." Those comments like, "Oh, it'd be a dream for me to lift a trophy." I don't. Will they? Let's do a poll on that because I'm interested to see what people think on that as well. Let's have a look. Let's see what people think. So let's ask. Oh shit. Will Maguire lift? Oh shit. Trophy. Yes or no? I'll ask away. Let's see what people think. Make sure you smash a like on the video, by the way. Subscribe to the channel. We've got a preview coming up very shortly in about an hour and a half's time for the big final. So going to be very interesting. What are people saying? 50-50. Oh, yes and no. Very interesting. It doesn't sit right with me, that at all. It really doesn't sit right with me. How can a guy who... I've seen the stats they keep putting out saying, like, every game he started, we've won. He started in insignificant games. He started, apart from, is it Leeds? Did he start at Leeds, I feel like? Apart from that game, he's just started in, like, cup ties and not very important matches or games where we've got a lot of big players in there anyway. Like, he hasn't... I remember him making mistakes in numerous games when he started. He isn't captain material. We've known this for a long, long time. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer give it him 6 months into his, whilst he was a player, give it him way too early. Banked on him performing good because of the big, the big price tag as well. But Erik ten Hag system more than anything has exposed how bad of a player. He's not terrible, but he's not an £80 million defender. When you look at Lisandro Martinez and you look at Rafael Varane, he's miles away from them, and he gets exposed in the ten Hag system, which is why he's not playing now. So for him to lift a trophy like he's been a significant captain and he's played a really big part doesn't sit right with me at all. I don't think he should lift the trophy. I think probably he will end up doing it. But again, yeah, it doesn't sit right with me at all. But I suppose we'll have to wait and see. He won't start tomorrow. I'd be very, very surprised if he did. I think, like I said, you can't replace Lisandro and Varane in a cup final. That'd be absolutely mental. But Ten Hag's done mad things before, so you never really know, to be honest. But really, really looking forward to that final. We've got a preview coming up in an hour and 20 minutes at 5 o'clock. There's going to be me, Dave, Aaron, and Sam on that show. So make sure you come and join us because I want to know everybody's thoughts on that final, whether Marcus Rashford will be fit, etc. Loads of questions coming out of it about the goalkeeper, midfield issues. you know, it's what a big occasion it is. Could be Eric Ten Hag's first trophy. So come and join us for the preview. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm going to go check on the 3 o'clock games, have a look and see how people are performing, etc. But look, I had to get my opinion out there. I had to go in depth on this Glazer ownership because Wayne Rooney coming out and saying that they've done a fantastic job is outrageous. And Laurie Whitwell and these other guys that are coming out saying the Glazers could potentially make a U-turn if they get investment from elsewhere to keep their heads above water. And they're reluctant to sell now, apparently. So this has obviously triggered something inside me. It's pissed me off, like I imagine it has with you guys. And I had to come and do a show on it. So thank you for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Smash a like on the video. Come and join us for the preview. More importantly, please come and join us for that because I'll get your comments in. We want to interact with you guys. And yeah, make sure you follow us on social media, Real Reds Talk on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, cool. Right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves. My name's Nick. Have a lovely weekend. See you for the preview.